Libertarians are smarter than all of the other political parties. Libertarian National Convention 2024. Over the whole weekend, Libertarians was trending. Free Ross was trending. All of this conversation around this controversial choosing or election of Chase Oliver, all of this has been the talk of the town all over the internet this weekend. And I think that a lot of people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And now we're going to go through what happened as it relates to Trump. We're going to go through what happened as it relates to the presidential nominee, Chase Oliver, that was elected to be the candidate running for United States under the Libertarian banner for the presidency of the United States. We're going to go over how that voting process works out. We're going to go over how mainstream media is now attacking libertarians and a lot of misconceptions and outright lies and stuff that's just not true. That's what we're going to go over. Buckle up. It's going to be a lot of information. The big scream about was the fact that Donald Trump accepted an invite to the Libertarian National Convention along with RFK Jr. The chairwoman of the Libertarian Party, Angela McCardle, sent it out to the independents, Donald Trump, as well as Biden. Biden ignored it. Biden didn't want to go into a hostile room. And when I say hostile, I don't mean aggressive in a sense of like trying to throw stuff or be disrespectful, but libertarians are generally not going to just agree with you because you're Donald Trump. And most of the rallies that Trump goes to, they're his people. Regardless of what media says, there's a lot of Donald Trump fans around the country, especially leftist-leaning media has packaged him as one thing. They've taken him out of context. They haven't actually told the truth. And I believe that if they told the fuller truth about some of the things that he's actually done, massive overspending, putting more money towards the military-industrial complex, they would get further ahead. But because they attack him and lie and take things out of context, they're actually helping build his legend. The Libertarian Party is the third largest political party in the nation. Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. As more and more people are more in opposition to the duopoly, they tired of the Democrats, they tired of the Republicans. And as much as people want to act like Trump has been so far removed from what Democrats have done, there's areas where he got it wrong. Do I think he's better than Biden? Absolutely. Do I think that he's solidly in the direction of freedom for Americans and liberty? Absolutely not. So anyway, Angela McCardle invites Donald Trump, President Biden, RFK Jr., Vivek Ramaswamy showed up as well. And these were all people that spoke at the Libertarian National Convention. Trump shows up. Trump gets booed at some points. Trump gets hand claps for some points. Half of the room was split between Trump's squad, the GOP Republicans in D.C. where it was at, and half of it was libertarians. It is the Libertarian National Convention. You guys are libertarians. You're having Donald Trump at a rally, or you're having an independent. I want to stop and address that real quick. This was a redress of grievances. Most people don't even know what that means. This is, hey, presidential candidates, come address our libertarian people, and we're going to tell you what we think is wrong with your policies and what you've done and what you haven't done. These were invitations as redress of grievances. So it's a hostile media room. It ain't all roses and strawberries. If you don't understand why that's important, I don't really know what to tell you. You can't say we're about free speech and then turn around and say, well, except for those people. That's what extreme communists and leftists do. That's not what libertarians do. Libertarians are actually the big tent that the GOP pretends like they are. So we don't have any problem discussing and rumbling around the ideas. If your ideas win in the marketplace of ideas, you win. Boom. Trump was bold enough. RFK Jr. was bold enough. Vivek Ramaswamy was bold enough to show up. Fast forward. Trump gives one of the most libertarian sounding speeches of his entire career. Whether that is his writing team, he knew the audience, whatever that is, he said everything that a libertarian would generally agree with. He had some points that he didn't understand. He talked about the NRA. Libertarians don't like the NRA. And the NRA is a horrible Second Amendment gun organization. They're more in alignment with being called the law enforcement organization. So he lost there. He did make this bold statement of if he is the president, he will free Ross Ulbricht. Ross Ulbricht is in jail for the last 11 years, going on 12, for making what's called the Silk Road, which is basically a website that people were free to sell whatever they wanted, whether that was so-called hard drugs or whatever. He made that website. He never made any of those deals. He's in jail for 2 life sentence term, plus I think maybe 40 years or something like that. It's obviously a miscarriage of justice. The people that don't understand what I mean by that, imagine if two people on Facebook agreed to do a drug deal and then the government went to go arrest Mark Zuckerberg. Similarly, this is what happened. He agreed to free Ross. He agreed to say, I'm kind of libertarian myself, especially after being accosted with all of these 90 some odd charges by the state. I kind of fancy myself a libertarian too. This is what he said, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, but he 100% said, I'm a libertarian too. He's making libertarian appeals. He extends an olive branch and says, either give me your nomination or give me your vote in November, because you guys don't traditionally get a bunch of the vote. And I thought that was fair. I do hostile media all the time. To be able to go in, have the conversation, knowing it's not going to be all roses and strawberries, get the booze, stay on point, get some cheers. Got some cheers. The free Ross thing, get some cheers. Asking, saying, I want to extend the olive branch, and I'm going to, if I win, I'll put some of libertarians on cabinet seats. This is all going great. This is all a massive gamble by Angela McArdle, because this has never been done before. This has never been done before. And she pulled it off while trying to run for re-election for her chair, which I think is great. This goes awesome. Republicans, libertarians, people that think they're conservative, that think they're libertarian, all were in the same space. There was cohesion, there was aggression, there was passion, and there was civility. Beautiful scenario. No foolishness happens. Libertarians, Saturday night, the word libertarian on Google searches, Ross on Google searches, through the roof. This is the reason you have an extremely popular candidate come to your convention and share his ideals. Now, Sunday is when we choose our president for the Libertarian Party. This is ranked choice voting. There are candidates that every round somebody's going to get eliminated. And spoiler alert, if you didn't know, Chase Oliver wins this seat. Chase Oliver, based on his moral positions, is not in alignment with the values that I have. He has a preferred lifestyle that I'm not a part of in his interpersonal relationships. There are photos of him at different letter, alphabet, rainbow, whatevers. That is his personal and individual choice as an adult. Chase Oliver has questionable tweets that, as I'm digging down and looking at some of these things, there's actually more context to what he's talking about. And I disagree with Chase Oliver's moral position on some things, but I think he's been very solid on the policy. Anti-war, anti-big government, libertarian in that regard. There is an internal struggle because of how he became the actual candidate from the Libertarian Party, how that process went to be. And a lot of people that are opining about it don't know how delegates happened. They don't know the backdrop to the caucuses that had internecine rivalries. They don't know the backdoor deal that happened. And I want to address all of this right now, but I needed to tell everyone about who Chase Oliver is, why I morally disagree with him, and I'm still pondering on whether I'm going to give him my vote. Now, obviously, Democrats would never say that. Democrats have ran a senile, doesn't know where he's at most of the time, Joe Biden for a re-election. They didn't say, we got him in that one time, let's find somebody else. They're saying we got a lot of money off the Ukraine deal. He's just a rubber stamp and he's going to write blank checks. We're going to try to get the money to keep going through Ukraine. You can argue back and forth about if that's true. I don't have time to explain that to you. But the whole Ukraine situation is a money laundering scheme. It's been there for the whole time, where his son over in Burisma was doing business. Do that due diligence on your own time. But the reality is the Democrats were bold enough to say Joe Biden, in one of the worst economies in the world, is doing a smash-up job, and he's not. So they would stay on code. Libertarians are more principled. Now, I think some libertarians are principled, but I think generally libertarians are smart, but they're not handling this approach to Chase Oliver in the most principled way, for the same reasons why Chase Oliver got in the seat. There is a caucus called the Mises Caucus who took over the Libertarian Party, having most of the seats, delegate seats in state chapters across the country a few years ago in the Reno reset. Reno was the last convention, and this is where the Mises Caucus took over. Because it was such a hard-fought battle between the Prague Caucus, between people that hate the Mises Caucus, because the Mises Caucus wants to take the libertarian movement in the direction of the Ron Paul movement. which it should be. And that's the reason why I support the Mises Caucus. Mike Heiss has done a phenomenal job of getting beat up for 4 or 5 years, taking over the party, getting stern leadership going in a direction to the point of within 2 years, you have the most potentially popular president in United States history saying, yes, I'll come address you at the Libertarian Convention. This happens because of the Mises Caucus, unequivocally. The people that don't like the Mises Caucus are delegates too. The Mises Caucus runs Michael Rechtenwald, who is the potential candidate for presidency, and the people that have beef, that are mad that they lost for 2 years, that took their ball and went away and tried to wish destruction on the Mises Caucus, looking at it short term, not long term, those people had a vendetta. And if their guy got eliminated, they were not going to vote for a Mises Caucus candidate, which was Michael Rechtenwald. That's what happened. We have ranked choice voting that the delegates do. And when those delegates are not lockstep in with who the candidate is, and if they also disagree with the Mises Caucus and hate Michael Heiss and hate the Mises Caucus, they are not going to be objective and say, Michael Rechtenwald may be the best person. They're going to say, I'm going to vote against this person. Now, when you factor that in, and you factor in ranked choice voting, and you factor in people having the option of voting NOTA, none of the above, that changes the percentages every single time someone is eliminated. There were 7 full rounds of voting that went into the night. I was there the entire time. The first 5 rounds, Michael Rechtenwald was the leader and had more percentage points than any other candidate. 5 out of the 7 rounds, Michael Rechtenwald, the Mises Caucus candidate, won those rounds. But every time somebody drops, the percentages change. And then you have politicking happening where Mike Termott, who was another guy that was running for president, gets eliminated. He initially agrees with the Mises Caucus and says, I'll back you. At the last minute, when it comes time to vote, he does a snake deal and decides to go with Chase Oliver in exchange for being the vice president under Chase Oliver's ticket. Never mind the fact that Chase Oliver already had said who he wanted, what woman he wanted as his VP candidate. He did not do it. He went back on his word, and that happened. To that, along with the fact that those delegates that now see Rechtenwald is out, and they don't like Chase Oliver, they were so focused on, I don't want a Mises Caucus candidate there, that they didn't think about, maybe we have the potential of electing someone that looks like a representative of all libertarians, especially with the bad PR that we've just finally overcome. We may be putting someone in office that could be easily packaged to look as if he's a part of the alphabet rainbow mafia agenda. They didn't think long term. They thought, we want to destroy the Mises Caucus. We want the Mises Caucus to lose. Were not happy with the fact that the Mises Caucus kept, I think, 13 out of 17 Libertarian National Committee board seats. So they keep Angela McArdle. She gets a re-election. They keep 13 out of 17 of those seats on the national chair, the board. So they definitely do not want the Mises Caucus to win the presidential seat. So instead of them thinking what was best, and there's people like Carlin that have said, I don't like the Mises Caucus, but I think Michael Rechtenwald, the author, right, that understands a lot of these things, I'm still going to vote for him. They're not being objective that way. The pragmatic caucus, a lot of the dudes and some of the people in all different parts of the place say, not only am I not going to vote for Michael Rechtenwald, when it came down to the brass tacks, we're not going to vote for Chase Oliver or anybody else. We're going to vote for NOTA. None of the above, which again changes the percentages. Let me back up a bit. In order to win in this style of ranked choice voting, one candidate has to get over 50% of the overall delegate votes. Delegate votes, not popular votes from libertarians across the country. I want to double down on that because some people that'll jump out there and go, this is who y'all selected. No, that's not what libertarians across the world or the country accepted and voted for. I'll give an example. The popular vote does not pick who the Republican or Democratic presidential candidate is going to be. That's just the RNC and the DNC and their delegates who votes. Right now we have President Biden. It's not a stretch to say that most Americans do not want President Biden to be the president. He's the guy, but he does not represent you or your values. Most Americans can say that. So if you can understand that line of logic there, you can understand this line of logic that yes, with the new information that most of y'all will not have as it relates to delegates, the internecine rivalries, the ranked choice voting system, not to mention some delegates had to leave that did not even get the chance to vote. Last my understanding, it may have been 200 and some odd delegates that their flights were leaving and they left before the final because it never takes this long. But this was a highly contested vote. And because it was a highly contested vote and those votes didn't count and it was such a razor thin margin, and you get to Mike Tiramat making this snake move at the last moment. And I'm going to say a snake move is just politics, but I believe that if you say you're going to do or not do something, you stick to it. And that's not what he did. So when you factor all of these things in, this myth that libertarians in general are going to support and be with and be in alignment with Chase Oliver, it's just not true. That again would be saying most of Americans are totally behind Joe Biden. Some people are so principled and objective as libertarians that they are going to look at what Chase Oliver's platform for legislation is, ignoring his moral position. Libertarians believe you as an individual get to live your life whichever way you want to. And I am one that agrees with that. The problem is some of his posts as it relates to puberty blockers for children have been spun out of context. I'll probably do another separate video about Chase Oliver and the texts and posts that some of them are fake and some of them are definitely being cropped out and some of the things are there. Or the question that's being asked is that context isn't there. So Chase Oliver, even though I disagree with his moral perspective, his position on anti-war, on government not being involved in things is solid. It's libertarian. It is. This argument that he is somehow a communist, that's just false. The people that are saying this don't know what communist and Marxist actually are. These people think the word queer means sexual choice, and it doesn't. Their agenda means we are going to overthrow private property. Y'all got to do your own research on that. Queer agenda means, for these people in the political sphere, means we are going to stop private property and free enterprise. But everybody thinks that if you just got a rainbow, then you somehow are a Marxist or communist. And there's nothing in Chase Oliver's public platform that's available for anybody to go on his website and look at. There's nothing on there that identifies with that. His talking points as it relates to that is very libertarian. However, some people are recognizing that, I don't like what you would look like you represent being cast onto me. I am in no way, shape, or form agreeing with puberty blockers for children. Context there. From all of the information that I've seen, the question that was asked of him was, do you think that government should have a say in this as opposed to parental rights and parental choice? That's a different distinction. And if you say, I believe it should be left up to the parents, instead of saying, I think that the government should step in and say no, which is traditionally not a libertarian position on anything. We don't want the government to make this decision. We want well-informed parents and citizenry and sovereign individuals to be well-informed and say, no, I'm not going to give my child these things that are potentially going to harm them later just because media has tried to spin them into believing that they're part of the rainbow crew. That's a fuller and more robust answer that Chase in a tweet was not able to say as full. And even though he gave a more full answer, that part's getting cropped out. So I have to defend him somewhat, not because I believe in or agree with him on some of these things, but I see where he's getting taken out of context. It's the same thing they do to Trump. Trump will say, I denounce David Duke. Trump will say, find people on both sides, but not the neo-Nazis. They'll cut that part out, they'll spin it, and it looks like I'm defending Trump when I'm really just saying you guys are being disingenuous and taking this person out of context, and it's not right. That's the part where I'm giving slight pushback and saying I can see, because I'm actually looking objectively, where his talking points and his platform is extremely libertarian. So his positions on his platform, if you want to be objective and intelligent enough to go actually look, his positions are actually libertarian. I disagree with his moral stances for his individual life. This is where I'm struggling. And I think that a lot of libertarians are struggling. There's another split that's been created. Some libertarians are going to say his moral life choices, the decisions that he's made as it relates to wearing masks as it relates to not pushing back against masks, even though he said, I've seen it, I don't think the government should be pushing for mask mandates. Private businesses, if they choose to, could say, no, you can't come in here without a mask. That is a libertarian perspective. Private property conversation. That's it. That's leaving it up, just the same as I leave it up to the parents because children can't consent. I leave it up to the parents, not government. These are libertarian positions, but some of these people that are more kind of Christian or morally conservative, and they see the rainbow agenda that's trying to attack children, they think because they don't have any information on what queer agenda, Marxist agenda actually is, it's been conveniently packaged as if you are anywhere on this side, you're definitely down with that agenda. They're running for a false narrative and it's not accurate. And so some of those people are aware and they're just choosing to say, I'm not voting for him because I don't want him to look like the representation of me. Not policy based, but morally based. And it's their vote. They get to do that. There are some people that, like myself, that have more of an objective approach, and I haven't landed yet. There are some people that say his policy is libertarian. He's not going to win. Principally, I'm not going to go rush and vote for Donald Trump, who has been overwhelmingly statist. Take the guns first, due process later. I'm definitely not voting for Joe Biden. I'm definitely not voting for RFK Jr. because even though I agree with him in his pushback against medical tyranny, he's an anti-gun climate change dude. Meaning asking for more government to limit the Second Amendment, asking for more government to limit businesses on carbon emissions or some other made-up thing. There's another split that's here. And I contend that the people that are making this split, I don't think that they are being as objective and looking at his platform for his platform. The dilemma turns into this question between, do I, as a party person, vote for this person knowing that he's been taken out of context while factoring in some of the things that he's not been taken out of context on, I just morally disagree with. His personal choices that don't align with your personal choices, he gets to do that. That's in essence being a libertarian. A more Christian conservative would say, I'm not going to vote for this person because of my Christian morals and ethics. If that's not Bible Belt right in alignment with that, then I'm not supporting them. That's not what the founding fathers were. The founding fathers were like, you get to worship whichever way you want to worship, and we're not going to make state or government involvement in which way you choose to worship. And that transcended into other things. So if we're going to be critical of Chase Oliver, right, we got to figure out, A, what are we critical of him about? I personally am critical of him about the puberty blocker conversation. I think that needs to be fleshed out. I do think he somehow is getting taken out of context, but I think he needs to jump on Tim Pool and needs to give a full explanation of what his current reality is and the context in that in full depth. I think that needs to happen. On top of that, all of the people that's the neocons that don't even understand all of this, that never done any research, y'all are looking like the ops. And I'm talking about the PSOBX, the just random people that's pretending like now they about liberty. Poso got a Bumble page. These people are kind of contradictory and they're just jumping on the bandwagon without knowing enough. They're saying things as if they are the end-all be-all, as if they're not utilizing government to push their agenda, which is statist, which is not conservative. This moral dilemma and legal and libertarian dilemma is the split that this situation has created, all coming from delegates that didn't think about what was best for the liberty movement, that had vendettas against the Mises Caucus, and now we're here. That is the part of the context that everybody seems to be missing, and not having the space for this person to fully flesh out and express how I got from here to here. The pictures that's being taken and reposted, oh, he's wearing a mask, he's pro-mask. It's not what he said. It's not what he said. He said a private business should be able to tell a person, we want you to not be in here with or without a mask. That's not where I would land, but I understand that is the libertarian position. My moral position is, if you a business, you wasn't saying that mask mandate before government told you. So you're allowing government to be a third party to influence you, but you are the private business, and I think it's stupid. But I can explain that fully and robustly, and that's what all sides of this argument are failing to do. Chase is failing to explain himself fully and robustly, especially about them old tweets and posts. Chase is failing to say, yo, I am allowed to wear a mask as an adult. I am allowed to be at whatever Queen show I want to be at. I am allowed to do all of those things as an individual. And if you don't rock with it, I understand. But I cannot let that bleed into my conversation as it relates to policy. Chase is not explaining that fully. It's been 4 days and he hasn't had that conversation. I heard somebody talk about, well, maybe the deep state is infiltrated. What happened at the Libertarian National Convention was not the deep state. It was deep-seated rivalries that turned into people thinking short-term and not long-term for the overall health of the liberty movement. Now, what looks like some deep state is magically, as soon as that happened, on cue, all of the neocon pundits that are contradictory, that back the blue, that's talking about big spending, getting behind Trump, on cue, all of those on social media all said the same thing at the same time. Just like all of the left-leaning politicians say the same thing at the same time. 14 days to slow the spread. They're showcasing them pundits look like somebody put a battery in their back. And I think that's the deep state. Not the big tent that is libertarianism that we get to struggle around where people are morally, ethically, so forth and so on, especially if it's not tied to impacting children and impacting private property. Children cannot consent. I know what he meant, but Chase needs to explain fully. As libertarians, we're not into that. So we in that space right now. That's a little bit of a primer for everybody. This was a long video, but I don't know, y'all might disagree with me for being nuanced and how dare me be objective? How dare me look at things from a multifaceted view? Y'all might disagree with me. Comment in the section. Tell me if you're going to support Chase, if you're not going to support Chase. I have not landed yet. I personally have not landed yet because it's a big thing that I need to fully think about. That's number one for me. And I hope that the people that are a little bit more objective are going to take in all of this new nuanced information that you did not have when you was jumping on social media just to be first instead of being thorough. There's a difference. But I don't know. Y'all might disagree. Talk about it in the comment section. Go over to solutionaryuniversity.org where we do civics classes so you people can have an understanding of what government is supposed to be involved in and what government is not supposed to be involved in. Confusion is stemming from the reality that most of you don't understand the limitations that are supposed to be on government. That's why we make the class. Solutionaryuniversity.org. My name is Maj Toure, the founder of Solutionary University. Hope to see you all in class. Be safe. Be solutionary.